Hello everyone, very good afternoon. Welcome back once again to your favorite channel, that is Lukmaan IAS Academy, and we proceed in our today's perspective Takkar, hot topic of the day, right? So what is the topic for the day here? It is India and Zaporizhzhia, what lies ahead with Ukraine. अब अगर ज़ैपोरिज़िया अगर आप नाम देख रहे हो तो आपको मे भी हो सकता है लग रहा हो कि सर कोई नया मार्केट में कोई वायरस आ गया है, कोई नया डिजीज आ गया है, तो ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. ओके, इट इज नॉट रिलेटेड टू एनी काइंड ऑफ अ डिजीज और अ वायरस. इट इज द न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट established inside the territory of the war-torn conflict region of Ukraine, right? तो यूक्रेन के अंदर एक न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट है जिसके ऊपर अगस्त 2022 के अंदर, यानी कि अब से 6 महीने पहले की हम बात कर रहे हैं, अटैक हुआ या यूं कहो वहां आग लगी या कुछ भी कह लो. लेकिन ये अटैक किया किसने? यूक्रेन ने किया या रशिया ने किया? रशिया कहता है यूक्रेन ने किया, यूक्रेन कहता है रशिया ने किया. ठीक है, तो कहने का मतलब यहां पर यह है ज़ैपोरिज़्झिया, द न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट, ओके, व्हिच फेस्ड अ बैकलैश, राइट, व्हिच फेस्ड सम काइंड ऑफ अ वायलेंस. Okay, not some kind of a violence, actually a violence, okay, but the attack, the source of the attack is still unknown, as Russia claims it to be done from the part of Ukraine and Ukraine does it vice versa for Russia, right? So now let's see the content and why we have got our Honorable External Affairs Minister onto the screen here. What makes us to discuss about Mr. S. Jaishankar. Okay, so let's see what's the point here. Okay, so here we go. What is the context? Okay, concern by India. हमारा इसमें क्या issue है? Then where is Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant located? And apart from that, which brings us to a very interesting question with regard to prelims. What is the pressurized water power reactor? Then India has no profiteer in the war crisis. Okay, India is not a profiteer in the war. Then India voices very deep concern over Ukraine conflict and two-headed eagle for India. A very interesting and an in-depth analysis it should take, right, with regard to this particular topic. So let's see context. Okay, so India, what is the topic here? India had tried to diffuse the situation around Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and quietly helped in the grain deal between the between the Ukraine and Russia, that is Moscow and Kiev. Moscow बोले तो रशिया का कैपिटल, कीव बोले तो यूक्रेन का कैपिटल. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has said even he vehemently rejects charges of New Delhi being a war profiteer over its procurement of discontinued or discounted Russian oil, not discontinued, sorry, discounted Russian oil. कहने का मतलब यहाँ पर देखो क्या है. Our External Affairs Minister, he has been on to the tour of Austria. Austria, याद रखना, not Australia we are talking about. Okay, so while he was there, he was having an interview with the Austrian newspaper, with the Austrian channel, where he was asked that you guys have been considered as a war profiteer. War profiteer मतलब जिसको जंग से फायदा हुआ हो या जिसने जंग से फायदा उठाया हो, between Ukraine and Russia. फिर सामने इंटरव्यूअर जो थे उन्होंने बोला कि ऐसा है, आप लोगों ने रशिया से ऑयल खरीदा इवन आफ्टर द सैंक्शंस फ्रॉम द वेस्ट. आपने रशिया से डिस्काउंट रेट पर ऑयल खरीद लिया, जबकि यूएस ने और कुछ वेस्टर्न और यूरोपियन कंट्रीज ने रशिया पर सैंक्शंस लगाए हैं ऑयल खरीदने पर. तो ऐसे में वी नो इट वेरी वेल दैट हाउ brave Mr. S. Jaishankar is and how vehemently he can answer. Even he has got a very, perfect oratory skills. Apart from that, he has got a very got a very, good scope of experience in the field of international relations. So using his all wise and wisdom thing, he delivered such wonderful answers, which we are going to discuss in the upcoming further minutes. Okay, so we talk about his statement. He said, no, we haven't been a war profiteer, first of all. India and Russia relations has been, very old, and they have been always very good and cordial. Nothing comes in between the Indo-Russian relations. And apart from that, talking about buying oil from Russia at discounted price, that's the bilateral deal, the bilateral trade deal between India and Russia only. And apart from that, talking about the sanctions of the West, we do not give it a damn. And apart from that, he has also stated that those were the sanctions imposed on Russia by the West without even consulting the Indian government. So why should we consider those sanctions? And that the sanctions that too against a dear friend, And that doesn't mean Russia is our dear friend, so we'll support Russia's invasion or attack into the Ukraine. No. India as a nation never supports any kind of a war or attack. So this was the statement given by our Honorable External Affairs Minister, okay, Mr. S. Jaishankar, inside the territory of Austria in his 4-day tour, right? So now, concern by India. The minister, Mr. Jaishankar, described the cap on price of Russian crude oil as Western decision, and that was taken without any consultation with India. So now he was giving interview, just interview ki hum baat kar rahe the, he was giving the interview to the media channel that is known as Die Press, newspaper Die Press of Austria, right? Mr. Jaishankar, while replying to a question on the Ukraine's conflict, indicated India's readiness to contribute towards diffusing the situation. Okay. Now, when we go ahead into the issue, concerns by India. अगर आप देखो यहाँ पर हमारे जयशंकर साहब का जो ट्वीट है, okay, so we can see here there are also incidents in Asia where countries in Europe or Latin America do not feel the need to take a position. बात जब आती है यूरोप की, तो एक इनका एक इंटरव्यू है that took place inside the Europe only, okay, that's even very famous on social media. A question raised by a journalist that what's India's stand on the nuclear crisis, the Russia and Ukraine crisis, Russia and Ukraine war. And do you think now the world will support India after the world has witnessed that India has given clean and clear support to Russia against Ukraine? So there, Mr. Jaishankar gave a very wonderful, befitting reply, what I must say here, that his statement was something like this, that the first thing Europe needs to understand the first thing that Europe needs to understand is that Europe's problem is not world's problem. And then the Europe also needs to understand and admit this, that world's problem, in fact, is not also the Europe's problem. Europe consider it as, as one particular individual who is very much attention seeking. The one who always wants to be the center of attraction and wants the whole masses to think about him or her only. And that's what the major problem of Europe is. That's what the major concern of Europe is here right now. Always attention seeking, but never delivering anything for the further of the countries. That's the biggest problem, and that's where the befitting reply from our External Affairs Minister came. That Europe must understand that Europe's problem is not world's problem, and must admit it as well, that world's problem is not also going to be the Europe's problem. Okay, and must also admit to this principle as well, that Europe always adheres to its principles, that it's your problem, not mine. But on the very contrary, Europe also claims this, that it's my problem and it's also your problem. That is vice versa, it's going very in an illogical and unplanned manner. Okay, so that's not going to be working in the realm of the geopolitics when we talk about the cordial relations between the nations, and that too when it comes to Europe, which is providing one of the most wonderful markets and one of the most emerging markets as well when it comes to the overall growth rate and GDP of the planet. Right up? Okay, so ये एक पूरी कहानी रही, right? तो यूरोप के बारे में ये क्लियर एक इंसिडेंस दिया गया यहाँ पर. देयर आर ऑल्सो इंसिडेंसेस इन एशिया वेयर कंट्रीज इन यूरोप और लैटिन अमेरिका डू नॉट फील द नीड टू टेक अ पोजीशन. तो जब यूरोप में कुछ हो रहा है तो ये एशियन कंट्रीज से एक्सपेक्ट क्यों कर रही हैं कि ये इनके सपोर्ट में आकर या कुछ बात करेंगे, कुछ नहीं करेंगे, राइट? एक बहुत ही क्लियर कट स्टेटमेंट इन्होंने दिया, राइट? नाउ मूविंग अहेड, द एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स मिनिस्टर पेड अ 4-day विजिट टू ऑस्ट्रिया दैट एंडेड ऑन ट्यूसडे. There were serious global concerns. Okay, there were serious global concerns over the safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant that in August, which came under fire, with both Russia and Ukraine blaming each other for the attacks. Later, a team of experts from the International Atomic Energy Agency traveled to the site. Okay, but still, what is the outcome? The decision that is uncertain, or you can call it undefined. Right? Now, apart from that, the grain deal. Okay, we talk about further aspects. The grain deal was sealed in July following months of negotiations, following months of negotiations to primarily facilitate the export of around millions of tons of wheat, maize, and other grains from Ukraine. The deal was considered crucial for addressing food shortages in many countries, specifically many countries you're talking about Europe. After, you can call it 5th of March, officially when the war broke out between Ukraine and Russia, officially at that stage, right? Okay. So Europe, when you talk about 5th of March, when officially the war broke out between Russia and Ukraine. Later on, after that, what we have seen, huge crisis with regard to energy supply. Yes, it was there. And with regard to the food grain supply was also seen inside many of the countries of Europe as well as Africa. And July last year, that is 2022, India played a very MasterCard role in commencing up or in finalizing up the treaty between Ukraine and Russia with regard to the supply of the grains. And that came to be popularly known as the grain deal for wheat, maize, and other grains from Ukraine. So the deal was considered crucial, obviously, without any doubt. Now, now we talk about the Zaporizhzhia's nuclear power plant, where it is located. So let's see about its location. So here we go. It is located on the banks of Dnieper River. D will be silent here. Dnieper River, just 200 kilometers from the conflicted Donbas region, where Russian-backed separatists and Ukrainian forces have been fighting. Now, it is one of the 4 operating nuclear power plants in the country and has been under operation since 1984. And further, the Zaporizhzhia, it accounts about 40% of the total electricity generated by all the Ukrainian NPPs, that is nuclear power plant, and 1/5 of the Ukraine's annual electricity production. That means it is one of the important nuclear sites for Ukraine. Now, the Zaporizhzhia consists of 6 pressurized water reactors units commissioned between 1984 to 1995 with a gross electricity production of 1000 megawatt every year. 1000 मेगावाट पावर जनरेशन इसका हर साल का है और 6 प्रेशराइज्ड वाटर रिएक्टर्स हैं इसमें, जिनको 1984 से 1995 यानी कि लगभग 11 साल के टाइम पीरियड के अंदर स्टार्टअप किया गया. So moving ahead, where is Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant located? So now you can see here the location. यहां से 200 किलोमीटर आगे पड़ेगा डोनबास रीजन, जहां पर एक्चुअली में जंग जारी है, लड़ाई चल रही है, और ये एक पर्टिकुलर लोकेशन है जिस पर अटैक भी हो चुका है, which has been under fire just 6 months back, August 2022. और अगर आप देख पा रहे हो यहां से, अगर हम एक्सट्रीम ईस्ट की तरफ देखें, so that will be Russia acting against Donbas, that is Ukraine there. So चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं. So it was built by Soviet Union in 1980s. एक पॉइंट. उसके बाद अगर आप देखोगे नाइपर रिवर, नाइपर रिवर इसके पास पड़ता है, और कौन सा नियरेस्ट शहर है ये, तो एनरहोडर. एनरहोडर शहर के पास ज़ेपोरिया न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट 1980 के दशक में शुरू किया गया सोवियत यूनियन के द्वारा. 1984 में ऑफिशियली काम करना शुरू करता है. 6 पावर रिएक्टर्स हैं इसके अंदर, प्रेशराइज्ड वाटर रिएक्टर्स हैं इसके अंदर, जिन्हें 1984 से लेकर 1995 1984 टू 1995 के दौरान जो है शुरू किया गया. और अगर हम बात करें Zaporizhzhia, that provides Ukraine 1/5 of the total power supply, and apart from that 1000 megawatt of electricity every year. So it possesses a very strong and vital position for the sake of electricity supply inside the territory of Ukraine, which has now been officially, अभी तक इस पर क्लियरेंस नहीं है कि अटैक किसने किया है, यूक्रेन ने या रशिया ने. पता ही नहीं, हो सकता है यूक्रेन का अपना खुद का ये एक चाल हो रशिया को दबाने के लिए, हो सकता है रशिया ने इस पर डायरेक्टली अटैक किया ही हो. नो, उसमें नॉट अ बिग डील, कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है. सो मूविंग अहेड. व्हाट इज प्रेशराइज्ड वाटर रिएक्टर? प्रेशराइज्ड वाटर रिएक्टर से हम समझते क्या हैं, तो आइए जरा बातचीत करते हैं। प्रेशराइज्ड वाटर रिएक्टर, हियर वी गो। इट इज अ टाइप ऑफ लाइट वाटर रिएक्टर that uses ordinary water. Remember guys, ordinary water, simple शब्दों में H2O का इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है यहां पर, okay, as the moderator and coolant. So the pressurized water plant is most common type of nuclear power reactor in the world. Then the pressurized heavy water reactor are fueled by natural uranium, while light water reactors are fueled by low enriched uranium. ठीक है, तो ये एक डिस्टिंक्शन है, आप समझ गए होंगे। नाउ अ PWR हैज टू वाटर सिस्टम्स। अब इसके अंदर जो है वाटर सिस्टम कितने होते हैं, तो दो होते हैं। तो पहला वाला है, इट इज कॉल्ड द रिएक्टर और द प्राइमरी सिस्टम। पहले वाले को हम क्या बोल रहे हैं, द रिएक्टर और द प्राइमरी सिस्टम दैट रिट्राइव्स हीट जनरेटेड इन द रिएक्टर, एंड द अदर वन दैट इज द सेकेंडरी वन, इट इज नोन एज टर्बाइन। द टर्बाइन सिस्टम और द सेकेंडरी सिस्टम that produces electricity power with steam generated by that heat. Okay, तो ये है कहानी प्रेशराइज्ड वाटर रिएक्टर की। सो इंडिया इज नो वॉर प्रॉफिटियर इन द यूक्रेन क्राइसिस। हमने साफ शब्दों में बोल दिया कि देखो ऐसा है, हमने मतलब हमारे एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स मिनिस्टर ने, ठीक है, मिस्टर एस जयशंकर ने, इन्होंने क्लियर कट स्टेटमेंट देते हुए बोला कि वी आर एब्सोल्युटली नॉट अ वॉर प्रॉफिटियर। व्हाट मेक्स यू थिंक दैट? We are not taking any kind of a profit from the war-ridden, war-torn Ukraine. Never we will. It's against the policy and the principles that guides the Constitution of India, that absolutely guides up the foreign policy structure of the nation as well. We will never take any kind of a profit from any XYZ country which is troubled with the war. And apart from that, talking about the discounted oil prices that we are undergoing a trade with the Russia, while the US and the other Western and European countries have imposed sanctions on the Russian oil. Why have India not taken any kind of a sanction? Then at that stage, Mr. Jaishankar has given a clear-cut statement that all of those sanctions were imposed by the West and the European nations without even consulting India. हमसे जब कंसल्ट किया ही नहीं, तो फिर हम अपना उसमें जो है एक्शन देंगे भी तो कैसे देंगे? जबरदस्ती तो हम उसमें आकर बात करेंगे नहीं कि हाँ यार देखो हमारा भी तुमने इसमें सजेशन ले लो। एंड खास तौर पे रशिया की जब बात होगी, ठीक है भाई, तुमको सीरिया, लिबिया, ईरान, इराक जो है ये सब नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है, तुमको एथियोपिया नहीं दिखाया तो दिखाई दे रहा है, तुमको नगोर्नो करबक रीजन नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है, एरिट्रिया में क्या चल रहा है, केनिया में क्या चल रहा है, वो सब नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है। और उसके साथ ही साथ तुम्हें ये भी नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है यूएनएससी की एक बहुत बड़े पावर जिसका नाम है चाइना, वो शिंजियान रीजन में क्या कर रहा है, तुम्हें वो भी नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है। बलूचिस्तान तो तुम्हें पता ही नहीं है कहां है। और म्यांमार के बारे में बात करने पर तो हो सकता है तुम्हारे को इनकम टैक्स डबल पे करना लग जाता है, राइट? तो ये सारी बातें आप कर नहीं रहे हो। आप बात कहां पर कर रहे हो? रशिया और यूक्रेन क्राइसिस की। आप अफगानिस्तान के अंदर तालिबान की बात नहीं कर रहे हो, राइट? बोको हराम जो नाइजीरिया के अंदर बहुत आराम से एक्टिवली परफॉर्मेंस दिखा रहा है, वॉयलेंट परफॉर्मेंस दिखा रहा है, उसके ऊपर कोई एक्शन नहीं किया जा रहा है। व्हाई आर स्टिल वी टॉकिंग अबाउट रशिया एंड यूक्रेन? यस, इट इज ऑल्सो अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, वी नीड टू एक्ट ऑन इट एज वेल, बट here you are talking about the sanctions on Russia, and that too sanction on the crude oil. You know it very well that sanctioning crude oil, and that to Russian crude oil, which is a very major player in the market of production and distribution of crude oil, will lead to the underdeveloping and developing countries doubling up their prices. And that will impact their internal economy, their domestic economy. And then it will face a high rate of recession and inflation that will impact the global trade as a whole. Then who will be the answerable personality there? Which country will take the charge? That yes, okay, it's because of me. Now let me turn this recession and inflation into the equilibrium situation. That's the question no one is going to answer. And here, Russia is facing sanctions. Okay, that's fine. Yes. But the sanctions imposed by the West and the European nations, they were done without any kind of a consideration or consultation with the nation of India. And then you are asking me that are we the profiteer with the war? No, absolutely not. The statement stands absolutely invalid and unjustified, because we were never taken into consultation and consideration while imposing sanctions on the production and the export of the Russian crude oil, right? Okay, so चलिए देखते हैं, आगे की बात करते हैं। यहां पर ये तो पूरी कहानी क्लियर हो चुकी है। Now, so I vehemently reject, okay, this was a statement by our Honorable External Affairs Minister, politically and also mathematically, that India is a war profiteer. Oil prices have doubled as a result of the Ukraine war, he said in the interview that appeared on Monday. तो डाई प्रेस की बात करें हम तो उनको करारा जवाब देकर आए हमारे मिनिस्टर साहब. Okay, so in such a situation it makes diplomatic and economic sense to look around the market for the best deal. Would Europe pay more if it didn't have to? Well, this is the question our defense minister asked in front of the whole Europe कि एक्स्ट्रा पे करेगा अगर करना पड़ेगा? कतई नहीं करेगा. जब से जंग शुरू हुई है यूक्रेन में $120 बिलियन की खरीद यूरोप अकेला कर चुका है रशिया से, और हमसे बोल रहा है, मतलब वही इट्स लाइक कि भाई हमारा कुत्ता कुत्ता तुम्हारा कुत्ता टॉमी. ये वही वाली कहानी थी और कोई कहानी थी ही नहीं. राइट, दैट्स द ओनली लॉजिक दैट स्टैंड्स हियर, नथिंग मोर एंड लेस देन दैट. राइट, right, so that was the only thing that Mr. Jaishankar asked there, that $120 बिलियन की खरीद आप कर चुके हैं जब से जंग शुरू हुई है. That's 6 times as much as we bought, that is India. Then now you're talking about the oil cap, the sanctions on the Russian crude oil. Well, what is this nonsense? Absolutely, what is this nonsense? That's what Mr. Jaishankar, once like 6 months back only in an interview he gave the statement, not 6 months, even 3 months back only in an interview he gave the statement that Europe must understand that Europe's problem is not world's problem and must admit it as well. That world problems, okay, is also not the Europe's problem. Okay, this is what the Europe gives the statement, that my problem is your problem, but your problem is not my problem. That's a very selfish kind of a relationship Europe tries to maintain with the globe, right? And that's what never the geopolitics runs with, and that's where the Indian government has very clearly, and Mr. Jaishankar has very vehemently described. Okay, $120 बिलियन की खरीद तुम पिछले 8-9 महीनों में कर रहे हो, जो हमसे 6 गुना ज्यादा है. Okay, और हमें कह रहे हो कि we are the war profiteer. Come on guys, have some brain, smart some ask questions, come up with the proper datas and facts, and then ask the question. You're dealing with the the great wisdom man, Mr. S. Jaishankar. IR पूरा पढ़ रखा है उन्होंने, ठीक है, और वो प्रेस वाले से उलझ रहे हैं, प्रेस वाला उनसे उलझ रहा है. तो come on, this is not the logic, right? Okay, so moving ahead, when asked about the relevance of the price cap for India, he said it would depend on what impact it had on the energy markets. And very wonderful statement. Nobody knows at the moment. Therefore, if prices continue to rise, the rest of the world will express what they think. So Mr. Jaishankar stated it was difficult to say whether the Ukraine war was shaking up the international order. But there is a clear psychological effect in Europe, which is forced to deal with a conflict in close proximity after a long time. What's more, Russia has always had a European-Asian duality. ये रशियंस अगर हम बात करें तो वो अपने आप को यूरोपियन और एशियन यूरेशिया बन जाता है रशिया. अभी तक रशिया जो है वो अपने आप को यूरोपियन टिल्ट दिखा रहा था, लेकिन अब एस जयशंकर साहब की अगर हम माने, जो कि एक स्टेटमेंट सही भी है, अब जंग के बाद रशिया अपने आप को एशियन दिखा रहा है. एंड दिस इज वेयर डुअलिटी इज. सो नाउ इंडिया वॉइसेस वेरी डीप कंसर्न ओवर यूक्रेन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. वी हैव ऑलरेडी डन इट. हम ज़ेलेंस्की साहब की बात कर रहे हैं या पुतिन साहब की बात करें, हमने इन दोनों से बोला है कि इट्स नॉट द एरा ऑफ वॉर. न्यूक्लियर है भाई, एक आध बटन किसी ने दबा दिया ना, सबने मर जाना है. हाँ, धुआं धुआं हो जाएगा, इतना बम मारेंगे कि धुआं धुआं हो जाएगा, और वही हो जाएगा, वही हो रहा है. Right? So our honorable Prime Minister even also has stated that it's time for Russia and Ukraine to clear up their issues, not with the weapon, not with the war, but with diplomacy and dialogues. That is the talks. Let's go ahead and have the bilateral treaties mastered by or mediated by some another international organization. Let's say we can be one of them, that like India and Pakistan. Okay, we both were mediated by the then USSR only. 1965 Tashkent files तो पूरी दुनिया आज सीरीज देख रही है वो, right? Apart from that, in the Indus Water Treaty, it was once again the whole of United Nations. And why the hell is United Nations not active here when it's coming to the point of deciding with diplomatic and dialogue ridden platforms? United Nations is very mute here, the toothless tiger. That's what the case here is. In fact, the UNSC is also silent. Why? Answer stands nowhere, right? So, अगले पॉइंट पर अगर हम चलें, So India voices very deep concern over Ukraine conflict, urges Russia and Ukraine to return to dialogue and diplomacy. And External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar in Vienna also said that there are profound changes in India's national security. तो हमें अपनी national security को भी ध्यान रखना है. आगे बढ़ते हैं अपने आखिरी पॉइंट की तरफ. Two-headed eagle for India. Now let's see what's the point here. Okay, so this two-headed eagle always looked more towards Europe than Asia. That's we are talking about Russia. Russians always saw themselves as Europeans. In the wake of Ukraine war, that orientation could shift to Asia. And this has geopolitical implications, he said. Asked why India did not support the resolution in which the UN member states condemned the invasion of Ukraine by majority, Mr. Jaishankar said, each state judges events according to its location, interest, and history. We need Russia on our side. Come on. UN will never come into the support of India if there is a war with China, because UNSC is handled single-handedly by China and US at those stages. UN General Assembly will never condemn China. Then why UN General Assembly? One thing that I would suggest that the question is to be asked: why UN and US? The so-called United Nations Security Council, the so-called United Nations General Assembly, and the very huge, powerful organization, country known as the United States of America, they were silent on the clashes of Galwan Valley, June 2020. China troubled the whole nation with the COVID-19 pandemic. Firstly, the incidents of Wuhan that shook the whole planet, and then the very same year, 6 months later from the incidents of pandemic, the very same year of 2020, June 2020, specifically talking about the clashes in the Galwan Valley. We lost many of our soldiers, the very braveheart soldiers, they were martyred. And who is going to take responsibility of those clashes? Why United Nations General Assembly was silent and why UNSC was muted on those particular incidences? It was Russia once again which came in front and supported India and asked China to come up with a diplomatic and a dialogue level talks so that the things can end on a very sweet note, not on a bitter and a sore note. And that's what we are doing with Russia. Russia and Ukraine, they are inside the conflict, and we are also asking Ukraine and Russia that don't worry, sit, let's have a talk, let's solve it with the greatest weapon of the geopolitics, that's diplomacy. Okay, yes, two-headed eagleness is being in the two-headed, या दोहरी बातें कर दी है रशिया ने अपने आप को कभी यूरोपियन और एशियन टिल्ट दिखाते हुए, बट ठीक है. S-400 तो हमें वही दे रहा है ना, मिराज 2000 हमने वहीं से निकाला ना, MiG-21 हमने वहीं से निकाला ना, ठीक. और रशिया और फ्रांस की दोस्ती सब जानते हैं ना, राफेल हमने ले रखा है ना फ्रांस से, अब एक्टिवली काम कर रहे हैं हम, और रशिया के ऊपर सैंक्शन लगा देने से यूरोप की ही बर्बादी है. Majority of the power supply of Europe comes from the territory of Russia, right? This is where we need to understand, and this is where the answer was given vehemently by our Honorable External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar. Okay, guys, so I hope everything is crystal clear here in this particular incident. Okay, you have learned a lot. Thank you for watching. See you all soon in the Rapid MCQ series, that is 10 MCQs based on the daily dose of current affairs. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Please do not forget to like the video, share it as well, and comment. Please do provide your valuable feedback into the comment box. Okay, bye-bye. Take care. See you soon. Jai Hind.
The first step towards achieving your dreams is having the right coach. Get the best education with Lukmaan IAS and make your UPSC dreams come true. Download the app now.